we can add it later.
Okay.
Okay, everybody. Boa tarde a todos, é um prazer enorme tê-los aqui conosco. Vamos receber hoje as experiências e as técnicas trazidas pelo nosso querido Peter Robinson, professor de Pepperdine. Eu sou a Valéria, diretora do Mediar Paraná, e é uma alegria ter todos vocês aqui conosco.
Peter, my dear friend, thank you for accepting our invitation. First of all, let me tell the audience who Peter Robinson is. I will do that in Portuguese, then I come back to you in a few moments, okay?
Perfect.
Boa tarde a todos, eu sou Fernando Hoffman, juiz do trabalho e coordenador da Escola Judicial TRT 9, mestre em resolução de disputas pela Pepperdine, onde eu conheci o professor Peter e estive estudando ao lado da nossa querida Valéria. Estamos tentando aprimorar a mediação, as técnicas de mediação, os meios adequados de resolução de disputas. Então, essa é uma iniciativa minha, pelo Tudo sobre Conflitos, com a Valéria, da Mediar Paraná, para disseminar, então, essa palavra para a sociedade civil e o público. Nós temos esse objetivo de trazer os melhores nomes de todo mundo para que vocês possam aprender com eles, para que todos nós possamos aprender com eles. Então, agradeço a presença de todos. Ao final dessa exposição, vamos anunciar mais um convidado com a data. Eu peço que todos fiquem até o final. E agora eu passo a apresentar o professor Peter Robinson. Trabalhou mais de 30 anos no Straus Institute for Dispute Resolution, onde ele recentemente se aposentou, embora continue dando suas aulas e seus cursos com maestria. Além de professor, Peter foi o diretor executivo do Straus por décadas e foi responsável por colocar um instituto no mapa mundial da mediação, da arbitragem, da resolução de disputas. O Straus Institute foi, por 12 anos seguidos, o primeiro colocado segundo a US Law, esteve à frente, inclusive, de cursos tradicionais, como o da própria Harvard. Peter leciona aulas e cursos de negociação, de mediação, desculpas, perdão e reconciliação. É autor de livros, como esse aqui que eu vou colocar na tela. Ele ministrou uma disciplina, felizmente pude atender, sobre Apology, Forgiveness and Reconciliation, desculpas, perdão e reconciliação. Tem um outro livro de princípios de negociação também. É um dos professores mais concorridos do mestrado, palestrante e instrutor em mais de 30 estados dos Estados Unidos, em vários países, inclusive no Brasil. A Associação de Mediadores da Califórnia do Sul escolheu como Peacemaker do ano em 99. Ele é membro honorário da Academia Internacional de Mediadores, reconhecido como Super Lawyer da Califórnia do Sul desde 2006, em anos consecutivos pela Los Angeles Magazine. Conhecido pelo seu humor, pela sua ética, pela sua fé, pelo seu compromisso, pela sua entrega nas aulas. Essa é uma breve apresentação do nosso convidado. Vocês podem encontrar mais dados sobre ele no site da Pepperdine University, e hoje ele irá falar sobre técnicas de fechamento, finalização de acordos, superação de impasses, propósito mediador, colchetes e outros. Agora vamos voltar ao Peter. Peter, now I come back to you. I was telling the audience a little bit of your huge career. I am so grateful you have accepted our invitation. Thank you so much. You are welcome to Brazil. I know that you love Brazil and Brazilian, and it's a pleasure to talk to you again.
Always. Thank you, Fernando, and thank you, Valerie. I want you to know that we are honored that both Fernando and Valerie made the incredible sacrifice to come all the way to Pepperdine and to be with us and to be on our campus and to talk together about mediation and study and read and think and argue and just debate. It's great fun. And now for you to invite me to be a part of what you're doing in Brazil. I want everyone who's looking at this to know that I think it's fantastic that Fernando and Valerie are committed to trying to bring resources and to continue to equip and to build the mediation community. When we're mediating, it's very insular. We do this alone, but yet for you to have a community of other mediators that you can think, that you can discuss, that you can debate different techniques, and that's, I think that's really, really healthy. So I'm delighted to be supportive of Fernando and Valerie and their effort to do that in Brazil. And I just hope that the rest of you who are being benefited by their efforts, let them know that you're grateful that they're making time out of their busy lives to say, but we also want to build infrastructure for our mediation community. So God bless you guys. I will also, and this just dawned on me when you guys started doing introductions, I want to let Valerie and Fernando know anytime during my presentation that they want to, I want them to jump in and say, Peter, stop, and I'll stop. And then you guys can talk about it in Portuguese, so that if people have some knowledge of English, but yet sometimes it may be, difficult. I have such respect for people who learn in a second language. When I was in university, my university required me to be fluent in a second language. So I studied about 4 years of Spanish. But the idea of studying and learning in Spanish, I can't imagine. So I just want to make sure that whenever either one of you thinks, Peter, give us 3 or 4 minutes to talk about what you just said in Portuguese, to make sure that that people are, and also it may be more than Portuguese, it may also just be adapting it to the Brazilian environment, and how this would make sense in Brazil and where it might not make sense, because I'll be describing things largely from a US perspective. Okay, Valerie, you okay with that? Okay. Fernando and Valerie asked me to make some comments about mediation, and I said I preferred, and they gave me permission to talk about some techniques. And when Pepperdine teaches mediation, we break it down into 5 stages. The very last stage is the closing stage. So I said, you know what? At least in the United States, the people who go to mediation, who hire mediators, they want to know, is this person going to be able to close the deal? We're investing time and money to go to this. And the question is it'll be worthwhile if we get this case resolved. If we can't get the case resolved, then we wasted our time in their perspective. I don't necessarily agree with that. But the fact is, sometimes the decision as to whether mediation was successful or not turns on the point of, did we settle the case? So I want to focus on that moment here. I want to make sure you know that what I'm about to discuss with you is very, very mediator driven. It is not very facilitative. The mediator is facilitating, but he's in a more powerful place as he or she is trying to sell the deal. This is a time where the mediator becomes an advocate, not for one party against another party. That would lose neutrality. But the mediator becomes an advocate, saying that resolution is better than not resolving. And as we try to encourage people to cross over the line and say, okay, I'll put this lawsuit, I'll put this dispute behind me and move forward with my life. That's a big thing. And sometimes the mediator plays a very active role in that. I want to make sure you know, Pepperdine does not teach that mediators should always be as pushy as I'm about to describe. In the early stages of the mediation, we very much encourage the mediator to be very patient and to be very empathetic and to let parties tell their stories and to be affirm. So there's lots of things that happen until we get to the closing stage. And I'm about to jump to that piece, and I don't want you to say, wow, that sounded crazy. I want to make sure you know that Pepperdine does believe that the dispute does belong to the participants, and that we need to respect their self-determination. It's up to them whether to settle this case or not, and to let them go through the whole process. Now, at the final stage of it now, and I'm assuming that in the United States, this might be a 6-hour meeting. And now we're down to the last maybe hour, maybe half hour. And then we get to these kind of techniques, but I want to make sure that you know them. If you use them too soon, the parties will feel bullied. They will feel steamrolled, is what we say in English, that a steamroller just came over and flattened them. So you must have wisdom as to when do I want to use some of the techniques we're going to talk about today. And my prayer is that you would be patient and give the parties a chance to do everything they can on their own to explore all dimensions of the conflict and all potential resolutions. But then we get to the place to where, you know what, we've done that and we're kind of down to two final offers on either side. And somebody needs to accept the other one's final offer. And now the mediator kind of leans in and says, okay, folks, now that we're here, you know, let me remind you of a few things. In the United States, this often happens when the mediator says, I want you to know it's your decision whether to settle the case or not. And then it is often followed by a single word, but. It's your decision, but I want to remind you of a few things. And essentially, they're going to put the decision that the party has into a context that they're more likely to say, you're right, let me resolve this and move on with my life. So what follows the but? When I say it's your decision, but I want you to remember. And in the United States, the two main tools in a general sense are to remind the parties, here we are closing the deal, right? And to remind the parties of the risks. What risks are you taking if you don't reach an agreement today? And of course, the biggest risk for us as lawyers and judges is the question of, we can never be sure what's going to happen if this goes to the judge, if this goes to a decision by another person. We think that we've been persuasive, but the other side does also. And we think we have an argument that equity and justice are on our side, but the other side does also. And we can never be 100% certain that we're going to get the outcome that we want. So we are reminding people that if you reach an agreement, it is certain. You've locked it in and you have control over it. If you don't, you are really at risk that whoever the decision maker will be, either a judge or in our country, often a jury, that they will in fact interpret things differently than you would like them to, and that they'll come up with a different conclusion. So as we think about risks, to remind people that that things don't go in court the way we think they'll go. We had a study in the United States, Randy Kaiser, K-I-S-E-R, followed, and this was actually for his PhD, followed mediations that did not settle. And then he found out what happened to them at court. And what he found was that 80% of the time, the plaintiff should have taken the defense's offer. The plaintiff did worse than the defense's last offer. Now, in our country, this is often driven by insurance companies. So the insurance company has the ability to evaluate these cases and what they think is going to happen at trial, and that they're pretty good. That they were correct 80% of the time. They offered $100,000. It went to trial. The plaintiff came back. He got $80,000. But notice what I did right there, because in fact, while the plaintiffs should have, of the ones that didn't settle, the plaintiffs were the ones who made the mistake 80% of the time. The fascinating part is that they were only off by 20%. So if the insurance company offered $100,000, the plaintiff on average got $80,000. He lost $20,000, but it wasn't catastrophic. What was interesting is that so that is a great fact. A great figure to quote to plaintiffs when they're saying, well, I don't think I should say, I want you to know that at least in the United States, people who followed it did a study. And again, you can look up the study, Randy Kaiser, and that 80% of the time, plaintiffs made the mistake of not taking the defense's last offer, right? You say, all right, Peter, that might help us put the fear of God about the risks into the plaintiffs. Well, what about the defendant? And this is interesting because the defendant was only wrong 20% of the time, right? 80% 20% adds up to 100%. 20% of the time, the defendants should have taken the plaintiff's last offer. The plaintiff demanded 120, and the defense said, no, the most we'll pay is 100. And 20% of the time, the decision from the court came in higher than 120, right? But the fascinating part is that when the defense made the mistake, they were off by 400%. So the plaintiff said, we'll settle for 120, and the jury or the judge came back and said 500,000. And suddenly somebody, whoever made that decision, is going to have to explain to his client, oh my gosh, we could have settled this for 120, and you said, let's not do it. And this is now turned into a catastrophic outcome. So again, there's risk, at least in the United States. Maybe in Brazil, all the judges get it right all the time. But I think it's something about humanity that says that everyone does the best they can, but they don't always necessarily. And there you are as a mediator, reminding people about risks. Do you guys want to talk about that in Portuguese for a minute, Valerie and Fernando, or no?
I don't think so, Valeria. I think we can move on.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think so either. We are subtitling. We're gonna put the subtitles later. So
okay. Oh my gosh! What? Thank you. Okay. No, I talk very fast. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay. Talk as much as you want. The subtitles will be in later. Thank you, Peter. Okay.
So I want you to know that when we get into this topic of risk, we essentially need to ask people, what is your risk tolerance? You know, and different people have different ability to tolerate risk. And so I've actually asked a person once, I said, I don't know if you like to gamble. I assume that there's casinos in Brazil. No casinos in Brazil?
No, we don't have.
So do you have to cross over cross the border to Argentina?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
That's the case.
So and you guys are in Paraná, so you're down close to Argentina. So the fact is, you know, in the United States, I say, I don't know if you're the kind of person who gets your paycheck at the end of the month, and then you go down to the casino and you put it on red and you play roulette. And some months you get paid double, and some months you get paid nothing. And you just love the adrenaline of wondering whether this month we're rich or this month we're poor. I don't know if you are a thrill seeker when it comes to taking risks. And most people tell me, no, I would never do that with my paycheck. I say, well, okay, right now they've offered you $100,000, and you say that, you know, no, I'll risk it. I want 120. And I want you to just think about it. You know, you are risking $100,000. That's real money. And then if they say, Peter, I am a gambler, I like to gamble, I would tell them, well, first of all, I want you to know that in the United States, we have Nevada is a state that allows gambling, legal gambling. And I have a sister who lives in Reno, Nevada. So we go visit her. Every time we visit her, as we start to drive into Reno, I ask my wife, what's our gambling budget? How much can I lose without you being mad at me? And then we agree. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, depending on other things. But frankly, I personally don't have a problem with people gambling as long as they can afford to lose whatever they're gambling. So when someone tells me, yeah, I'm a gambler, Peter, I ask them, well, can you afford these stakes? Can you afford to place this bet? If this blows up in your face and you get nothing, will you and your family be okay? And more often than not, people tell me, no, are you kidding? If this goes to the judge or the jury and I end up getting zero, that would be a disaster. And I would say, well, okay, stop then. I know you want 120, but you've got 100,000 on the table right now. And while it's not everything you want, realize that if you roll the dice and see what happens to see if you can get the 120, you might get nothing. And if that would be a disaster for your family, you need to be careful. Okay, so here we are encouraging risks. You know, another risk that I like to remind people of, I think most of the time when people are in a court battle, they're thinking, I want to be vindicated. I want someone to say that I'm right and the other person's wrong, right? We realize if you find a settlement, nobody gets vindicated. Everyone agrees to just kind of, okay, you know what, there was a misunderstanding. We found some solution, and usually nobody feels like I'm the winner, they're the loser. Okay, so someone might say, I want to go to court so that I can be vindicated publicly. Okay, fair enough. I understand that desire. And what I want to let them know that I want you to know, if you take the risk, part of what you're also risking is what if the other side is vindicated? Right now, you've been telling everyone that what a bad person the other side is, and you're the good person, and all this stuff. And now finally, a judge or a jury is going to look at this and give their opinion. And what if they end up saying that, you know, Peter, you may think that you're right, but you're wrong. And now suddenly all these other people who, and of course, whoever's on the other side, if they're vindicated, they're going to publicize it. Well, we went to court and we won. And the whole idea of non-disclosure agreements as part of a settlement. You know what, neither side's going to talk about this. We're just going to say we reached a mutually satisfying agreement. So the whole idea of the risk of the other side being vindicated, and of course you being humiliated, is something to plant a seed in the head of the person who is insistent that I must be vindicated. Well, you know, if you insist on getting the answer to that question, there's a chance it won't be what you want. And if it isn't, you know, how is that going to work for you? And most of the time they tell me it's a disaster. So here we are, as far as the risk. Another tool often used in the United States is to ask the lawyer, if you took this exact case to 10 different judges, would they all come out the same? Because right now, if you're talking to the plaintiff's attorney, you know, he's convinced his client that the minimum he should take is $120,000. And now suddenly you say, so if you went to 10 different judges, do you think that every one of them would come back at $120,000? And at least in the United States, the lawyers say, no, that different things would happen and different judges are different. It's not that predictable. And then what you find out is say, well, okay, if you took it to 10 different judges, you know, give me a cross section of the outcomes. Well, some of them might come back at 150, and some might come, you know, 4 or 5 will come back at 120, but then 2 or 3 might come back at 80. And then I might have 1 out of 10 to where the judge would rule against us and we get nothing. And now, again, the client for the first time is realizing the unpredictability of the judicial system, that every judge does his best to do what is fair, but he or she sees the case from different angles and different backgrounds in history. And again, for them to realize that there's risk. Okay, enough with risk. The other thing that we generally do is we talk about the costs. If you don't settle us today, you know, what are the costs that are involved? Well, the most obvious cost is, you know, to continue to pay your lawyer to fight the lawsuit. And I don't know if it's good manners or bad manners, but the mediator might want to at least tell the client, you should talk to your lawyer about how much more it's going to cost if we take this all the way to a judicial decision. And factor that in, because back to that case to where the defense was offered $100,000 and the plaintiff wants 120. If the lawyer says it's going to cost them $20,000 to get a decision, it's kind of like, well, guess what? You know, you're essentially getting your 120, but you didn't have to pay that extra 20. In your country, does the loser have to pay the attorney's fees?
Yeah. Yes. As a general rule, they have to pay.
So that's another risk. Say, you know, if this goes upside down and you lose, not only are you not going to receive money from people, but you might have to write a check for $20,000 to the other lawyer. Imagine how that's going to impact your family's finances and your feelings and your frustration about this whole situation, because you believe you should have won. And now I don't have to pay my lawyer who told me I was going to win and didn't win. I got to pay the other lawyer. And the aggravation of that is another cost and another risk. Okay, but in addition to the financial cost, think about other kinds of costs. In economics, they talk about opportunity cost, that we all have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the question is, how are you going to use your time? If you're a businessman and you're going to continue to fight this fight with another business, for you to think about how much energy and focus and resources of my organization are going to be used fighting with these other people. And then to ask the question, what's the return on investment? If we invest all of this effort, we might get an extra 20,000 or 100,000. But the question the mediator might say is that if you ask the people in your organization to use that same focus and energy and effort, but instead of fighting with these other people, you're going to open a new location or a different product line. I mean, what would be the return on investment for using your resources that way? And for you to challenge people to say, is this the best usage of your time, energy, and talent? Opportunity cost is another concept to think about with people as they think about if they want to keep fighting. Another cost is relationship cost. Once you take a case all the way to a judicial decision, it's very rare that people still have a relationship. But it does happen sometimes to where, as part of the settlement, people agree that they're going to continue to do business with each other, or family members agree that, you know what, we're gonna still have, you know, Christmas dinner together, and our children, you know, are not going to grow up in an environment where there's a rivalry between the two brothers, and that the cousins are gonna love each other instead of hate each other. And there you have all of these ideas of what happens to all the relationships if I continue to fight with these people. And you might not only want to think about your own relationship, maybe you're in a conflict with someone who you feel has defrauded you. You don't want a relationship with them, but also think about the collateral damage. Think about how this feud, you know, is affecting your spouse, your children, your legacy. Is this going to be the place to where a whole tribe of people who are really under your influence are going to define this other group of people as evil and bad and wicked, and now suddenly we have this feud, and that our children are growing up with a hatred in their heart towards certain kinds of people, and is that what we want for our children, or do we want them to grow up with love for other people? So think about relationships. Other costs. What about psychological costs? What about waking up in the middle of the night? What about the stress? My goodness, the studies shows that how stress is so bad for your physical health, and the stress of waiting to see how all of these risks and costs are going to play out. It can't be healthy for you. Some people say, I love to fight. Well, okay, you know, I just want you to know there's a cost that gets paid for going down that path. All right. So we emphasize these two things, costs and risks. Those are the general concepts. Now I want to get down into some very specific techniques. Let's assume we get back to that case to where the plaintiff is demanding $120,000 and the defense has offered $100,000, right? And everyone has said, you know what, I'm done. I've stretched the rubber band as far as I can stretch it. You know, I don't want to be bullied by the mediator. Okay, great. You know, when people tell me that, I don't want to be a bully mediator. So I try to accept it and say, okay, I understand. We can just declare impasse right now and walk away. But if I can, you know, there are some things that a mediator is uniquely positioned to do. And let me suggest, let me just right now ask you a question. Okay. The first concept is hypothetical offers. A hypothetical offer is when the mediator walks into one caucus room and talks privately with one side and says, you know what, we're stuck. They don't want to come down anymore and you don't want to go up anymore. I am willing to go into the other room and see if I can get them to split the difference. See if I can get them to meet you at 110. But I don't want to do that if I'm wasting my time, because it will not be easy. They are very stubborn. They have very strong feelings, just like you do. But part of my job is to have conversations with people who think that they don't want to do anything more to settle this and see if I can convince them that it's in their best interest. So the fact is I'm willing to do that. But if you tell me that 100,000 is really as high as you're ever going to go, then I'm not going to go try and see if I can get them to come down to 110. So what I need to know from you is that if I can get them to 110, would you accept that and do the deal at 110? Now notice with me, up until now, he says he won't pay a penny more than 100,000, but he might be willing to go to 110, but he doesn't want to be the first one at 110. If he goes to 110, he's worried that the plaintiff is going to say, okay, I'm at 120, you're at 110, let's do 115. And you just feed the greed of the plaintiff. So maybe, and the way this hypothetical offer works is you say, this is in confidence. I will not let the other side know that you're at 110 unless they're also at 110 and the case settles at 110. Scout's honor, I promise you, I will not allow you to be in a situation to where you're at 110 and they know you're at 110 and they're at 120 and then they ask to split the difference one more time again. That will not happen. We'll either settle the case at 110 or we'll leave here, they thinking that the most you'll pay is 100 and you thinking the most they'll pay is 120. The least they'll take is 120. So under those circumstances, would you tell me that hypothetically, if I can get them to 110, that you would do the deal at 110? Okay. And often this technique is used very often in the United States. Is it used often in Brazil? Is this common? Yeah. Okay. So the fact is this is
yes, we use a lot.
Okay. But now here's the other thing. If you're doing the mediator's proposal, let's assuming that you get a positive answer out of the first room. Now you go into the second room and you turn to them and say, I want you to know they're at 110, you're at 120. We're just about at impasse. Everyone's being very stubborn. Everyone feels very strongly. I don't know if I can get them to 110, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to go in there. It will not be easy, but I'm willing to try. But I'm only willing to try if it's worth my while. If I get them to 110, hypothetically, would you come down from 120 and settle the case at 110? Let me ask, is there any part of what I just did that bothers you? And I hope the answer is yes, because when I go into the second room, I tell them that I don't know if I can get the people in the other room to come to 110. And in fact, I know that they will, if they'll come to 110. It's conditional, but they will come up to 110. And I told them that I don't know if I can get them to 110. So there's a certain amount of deception, or frankly, lying in the second room, which makes most of us as mediators uncomfortable, except for it's pretty common, at least in the United States, for people to do this. So to me, I hear mediators say, well, do you have to say that in the second room? I think, well, in fact, this is interesting, because what if you're with lawyers who have been to a lot of mediations and you walk in and you say, I want you to know, I don't know if I can get them to 110 or not. You know, can I get you to come down? What if he asks you this question? Peter, have you already asked this question of the other room? Because he knows that I wouldn't be in this room if the other room didn't already say yes. If, in fact, he might even say, Peter, let me ask, are they at 110 if I'm at 110? He's seen this trick too many times, and he now is trying to kind of flesh it out. And a lot of mediators try to hem and haw and not lie and say, well, you know, I can't really tell you. But you know what? I think that most mediators that I know in the United States would look the lawyer in the eye and say, I told you, I don't know if I can get him to 110, which is disturbing because we're being dishonest. But now we're in a place to where I hope ethics are easy for us when we're choosing between virtue and vice. I hope virtue always wins. Ethics are complicated. We have to choose between virtue and virtue. So the one virtue in the situation is honesty and transparency. That's a virtue, but there's a competing virtue. The other virtue is keeping your promise to protect a vulnerable party. And when you said, please, to answer this question, I promise I will protect you. I will not let this come back to bite you. Now suddenly when he's trying to find out the information that would make them vulnerable, most mediators would say, I don't like being dishonest, but I will protect a vulnerable person who trusted me to protect him. So, all right. So, but there's a way to avoid all of this. Instead of doing the hypothetical offer, what about doing the mediator's proposal? The mediator's proposal originally was, now notice with me, the mediator's proposal is where the mediator names a number. It's not the number that he thinks is fair and just. It's the number that he thinks has the best chance of getting the case settled. And he has to be very clear, especially if he's a judge. You know, I want you to know that the number I'm about to name here is not the number that I think is just, but in the nature of in the context of your negotiations, this is the number that I think I have the best chance of getting two people to say yes to get the case settled, right? Okay, so he's going to name a number. And then each side is just going to, in their own caucus room privately, tell the mediator yes or no. Do we have a deal at that number or not? If we have this impasse at 100 and 120, 100,000, 120,000, and the mediator goes into the caucus room and asks permission, I would like to do a mediator's proposal. Is that okay with you? Right? If a party says yes, what do we know about that party? That they're probably willing to go halfway between the last two numbers. Otherwise, they would say, no, don't do a mediator's proposal. I said 100, I meant 100, I'll never go higher than 100. But if he goes, sure, go ahead, give me a mediator's proposal. Now we know that he's still posturing in the negotiation. Now I go to the other room, let me ask, you know, and we're approaching impasse in this situation, you know, I would like to do a mediator's proposal, but I'll only do it with your permission. Do I have your permission? If he or she says yes, what do we know now? They also are willing to take more of a haircut and come down a little bit. So asking permission to do a mediator's proposal is another way to do a hypothetical offer without having to bald-faced lie to either party. But when we do the mediator's proposal, just to make sure we're good on the mechanics, you know, you have to make sure everyone understands from the beginning that I'm going to name a number. Both of you are going to tell me yes or no. If we get two yeses, you know, I share that information and we have the case settled. If we get two no's, well, the case isn't settled. If I get one yes and one no, so one person is vulnerable, the other one has been stubborn, right? I treat it as two no's. So I will never tell you if we had two no's or if we had one yes and one no. I'll just say, I want you to know we did the mediator's proposal that we do not have the case settled. And now both of them can thump their chest and say, yeah, I would never, I told you I wouldn't pay more than 100, when in fact he told you privately, I would have taken the 110. So there's the mediator's proposal. I want you to know that is what I call the clean mediator's proposal. In Los Angeles, some of my friends who are commercial mediators have started doing something that, in my opinion, I feel is dirty. So I call it the negotiated mediator's proposal. That the mediator says, I'd like to do a mediator's proposal. He gets permission from both sides. Okay, great. He walks into the room. So let's say that back to that case, 100,000, 120,000. He walks into one of the rooms. Let's assume he's with the defense room. He goes, yeah, I want you to know, I think the number is going to be, you know, 110. And the lawyer says, if you make it 110, you will not get a yes from our room. We will not pay 110. He goes, are you serious? He goes, yeah, serious. And the mediator says, well, what's the most you would pay? And he says, 107. And the mediator says, listen, make it at least 109. And he negotiates with the advocate and tries to get him up to 109. And let's assume he's successful. Okay, 109. So now he gets one side that he knows that they'll say yes if it's 109. Now watch this. This is really creepy. Now first of all, some of them don't even walk to the plaintiff's room. They just announce, once you know, mediator's proposal 109. And the plaintiff didn't know that the mediator gave the defense a chance to be highly influential in what the quote unquote mediator's proposal was going to be. That's why I feel it's kind of dirty. But here's the more neutral mediator walks in the defense and gets him up to 109. Goes over to the plaintiff's room and says, I want you to know, I'm thinking of doing a mediator's proposal. Excuse me, I'm trying to figure out, you know, the number I should use for a mediator's proposal. And he says, I'm thinking of 105. And the plaintiff's lawyer goes, are you kidding me? I was expecting you to cut it in half. I thought you'd go to 110. I don't think I can get the defense. I don't think the defense side will take 110. If I say 110, I think we're not going to get the case settled. He goes, well, you got to do better than 105. He goes, well, how, what's the lowest you can go? Again, 110. I can't sell 110. And then they have, and eventually, hopefully the plaintiff's attorney says, well, it's got to be at least 109. And the mediator says, I don't know if they'll take 109, but I'll try. Right? And then he walks away. Notice that the mediator managed the expectations. This is all in the negotiation part of our program, right? Managed the expectations of the plaintiff's attorney to say 105, so he'd be satisfied at 109. He originally was hoping for 112 or 115, but then when he came in at 105, he said, well, we got to at least split it. You go, so anyways, so it's still in the mediator's proposal, but it's negotiated, which is frankly just something that's been happening in the United States the last 2 or 3 years. Up until then, most of them did it clean. Okay, so now we have the hypothetical offer and the mediator's proposal. How are we doing on time? Let me look here. Okay, so I still got 15 minutes, I think. All right, I want to talk about brackets. The first time I did brackets, I did it by accident. I volunteered for a court. I was not getting paid. The lawyers drove out to Pepperdine. If you're not familiar with Los Angeles, that's about an hour drive from downtown Los Angeles to Pepperdine. So they come out to our campus in Malibu on the beach, and they're mad because the judges ordered them to come meet with me to do mediation. And the first thing they say when they walk in, this is a waste of time. I said, well, why is it a waste of time? We're too far apart. If we were closer, it might make sense, but we're too far apart. I go, how far apart are you? And the plaintiff says, I'm demanding $200,000. And the defense says, we've offered $10,000. This is a car accident case. I said, okay, we got a gap there. Let me ask, you say that is so big that you think it's a waste of time. How close should you be for us to do the mediation? And they both talked to each other. They decided $100,000. I said, okay, great. So now we're trying to get within $100,000 of each other. What I want you to do now is I want both of you to go to your separate rooms. I'm going to come in. I want you to each just give me your number. If those two numbers are within 100,000, we settle the case. Excuse me, we do the mediation. If those two numbers are not within 100,000, I tell you, okay, we're not going to do the mediation today. You can go back and tell the judge we met with Robinson, the mediator, and it didn't work. And we're done. And I'm not going to, you don't want to be here. I'm volunteering. If you don't want to settle the case today, I don't want to be here. So the fact is, it's a put up or shut up time. Let's see what we're going to do here. And don't you know that they said, and they go, really? You really let us go? And we can tell the judge that, yeah, absolutely. I'll tell the judge that we tried and it didn't work. And they said, okay, great. So don't you know, I walked into the defense room. He gave me the number of $15,000, right? He wasn't very generous as far as we got a $190,000 gap and he only went up 5, right? But this is the funny part. The plaintiff's attorney was at 200. He went all the way down to 100. Notice that we were going to be within $100,000 if he stayed at 10. We're already at $90,000 apart. So the fact is that the plaintiff was just bravado. Okay, so the fact is that, so now we have this gap. I said, okay, I want you to know, guys, we're going to have the mediation. You're only $85,000 apart. Plaintiff's at 100, defense is at 15. I started giving an opening statement. I got about 3 sentences out and they go, stop. I go, what? We don't want to hear this. I go, this is what I'm supposed to do. You got to know about confidence. They go, we don't care. I go, what do you want to do? They go, let's do it again. I go, do what again? Let's do your little bracket thing again. I go, what do you mean? He says, let's see if we can get within 45,000. I go, what? He goes, yeah, let's just both give you a number and see if they get within 45. I said, but you guys don't know about confidentiality yet. They go, we don't care. I said, okay, well, let's give it a shot. I went into the defense room. They went all the way up to 20,000. The plaintiff this time was getting smarter, right? He went to 60. So they're only 40,000 apart, right? I brought them back together. I said, hey guys, good news. You know what? We're not going to have the mediation. I think we're going to settle the case today. Plaintiff's at 60 and the defense is at 20. You're only $40,000 apart. And they both said, great. I started telling them about confidentiality. And they said, stop. I go, what? They go, we don't want to do this. I go, you guys haven't talked about the case. We haven't looked at underlying interest. I haven't been empathetic. There's a whole bunch of things I'm supposed to do. They go, we don't care. I go, well, what do you want to do? Let's do it one more time and see if we can get within 20,000 and we split it. I said, what? They go, yeah, just give us, let's do that thing again and let's see if we get within $20,000 and split it. So sure enough, now we have a goal, 20,000, knowing that we're going to split. If it goes beyond that, sure enough, the fence went to 25 and he went down to 45. They're exactly 20,000 apart and they settled at 35, right? And I never gave an opening statement and the parties mutinied. It was the lawyers who drove the mediation that said, we don't need to talk about the law and the facts and we don't need empathy. We don't, just help us crunch the numbers, will you, Mr. Mediator? And I said, whatever you guys want to do, man. So here we are using brackets to narrow the range. Now here's another illustration of brackets. I got asked to do a financial fraud case. An accountant signed a piece of paper that he should not have signed. He was already in prison for fraud. So liability is not an issue here. The company where the accountant worked knew they had liability. So the mediation started. Some investors relied, a group of about 30 investors relied on this financial statement that was not true. So we started the mediation with the the defense started at 1 million. And the defense was at 4.5. Sorry, plaintiff was at 4.5. And we mediated along and we were making progress. Probably 4 hours later, these guys are up at 1.8 and these guys were at 3.7. From my assessment, by the size of concessions and conversations and just everything, I thought these guys were trying to settle the case for 2, and that these guys are trying to settle the case for 3.5. But this is just speculation. This 2 and 3.5. These are the last numbers on the table. One of the parties comes to me in caucus and says, Peter, I just got a phone call from my wife. She's pregnant. We've been trying to start a family for 10 years. This is a really big deal in my life. I need to be home tonight. I've already checked at LAX. The last flight to my town leaves at 6 o'clock. I got to be at the airport at 5 o'clock. I got to leave downtown LA at 4 o'clock. So you've got about 2 hours left to try and get this thing going. All right. And I said, well, it seems to me like the first thing we need to do is tell the other side. Because I agreed. So I went in the other room and told there's 4 people who are the committee representing 30. So I want you guys to know the general counsel for the accounting firm got some very important personal information. He has to be home tonight. He has to leave here at 4 o'clock. And they went crazy. Listen, we've come from other parts of the country too, and we all agreed we'd be in this for the long haul. We're going to stay all night if we had to. This is ridiculous. And they said, let's just go home right now. And I said, well, stop. Let me see what I can do. They go, what are you going to do? And frankly, I didn't know what I was going to do. But I just said, I'm going to do mediator tricks. They go, what are mediator tricks? I said, you got to stay to see them. And I did not have a clue at this moment what I was going to do. They go, whatever. Okay, we'll stay for mediator tricks, right? So I walked back into the room. Say, okay, they're just barely going to stay, guys. We got to do something here. So I brought them all back into the room. I said, you know what? Let's stop trying to settle the case. Trying to settle the case is too hard. Right now, we're too far apart. Let's try to get in close. Let's just narrow the gap. And then I named the gap. I said, let's try to get within $500,000 of each other. That's the bracket I want to create. I want to create a $500,000 bracket. I want to go into each of your rooms and have each of you give me a number that's designed to see if we can get within 500,000. If we can get within 500,000, notice it's kind of like a mediated proposal. Then you will reveal the numbers and we'll negotiate from there. If you're not within 500,000, I just keep those numbers confidential to me. And both sides said, okay, fine. If that's what you want to do, mediator, go ahead and do it, right? Well, I went to the defense room and they did what I thought they were going to do. They went to 3.5. Okay. I went to the plaintiff's room and they surprised, I'm sorry, here's the plaintiff, here's the defense. I went to the defense room and they surprised me. They didn't go to 2. They went to 2.5. While they would have liked to settle the case for 2, they actually had more room to run. And now they're making an offer at 2.5. Just to get within 500,000. It's not their last best final, right? The mediator learns a lot through this kind of situation. But notice with me, are they within 500,000? No, they're $1 million apart, 3.5 and 2.5. They did not hit the bracket. So I brought them back together. I said, I want you guys to know you're not within 500,000. And the plaintiff says, we knew this was a waste of time. Let's just go home now. I go, stop. They go, what? Let me keep doing what I do. They go, what are you going to do next? I didn't have a clue what I was going to do next. But then I said, okay, I know what I want to do. What's that? I'm going to name a mediator's proposed bracket. And then I'm going to go to each of your rooms and you're just going to tell me yes or no. The bracket will be a $500,000 bracket. So it's going to be a mediator's proposal of a bracket. Fair enough? They said, okay, fine. Okay, so what's your bracket, Robinson? In this situation, what would you have named? You know, one side's willing to do 3.5, the other one's willing to do 2.5. I gave everybody an equal haircut. I've had mediators tell me, Peter, you knew that the defendant was more motivated. You should have slanted it maybe like 3.4 to 2.9, but I gave everybody an equal haircut. So I said 2.75 to 3.25. That would be, you know, a $500,000 bracket. Just tell me yes or no. Both go back to their rooms, give them a few minutes to talk to their lawyers, what have you. I walk in, they both say yes. I bring them back and I say, guys, good news. You know what? You are within $500,000. And these guys especially were going, wow, we're shocked. You see, they didn't realize that they'd gone from the last number they heard was 1.8, and now they didn't realize that 2.5. Anyways, so now we have them close enough that it looks like, okay, you know, something's going to happen here. And it shows how using brackets gives the mediator information. I'll let you know from there, I screwed it up. And I'll tell you how I screwed it up so you can learn from that as well. From there, I did something. I walk in to this room here, and he goes, all right, Peter, what do you know about the last 500,000? I go, I don't know. What do you know about the last $500,000? You know, you're the general counsel of this large accounting organization. You've got a lawyer from your office with you. You've got 2 lawyers from Skadden and Arps, one of the most respected law firms in America. You know, you've got more lawyers. What are you guys going to do about it? He goes, well, you're the media. What are you going to do about it? I go, I don't know. If you want to, let's flip a coin. He looks at me and I go, okay, if you want to, we can flip a coin 5 times, each time for $100,000. And if you want to, we'll flip a coin 100 times each time for $5,000. The more time we flip a coin, the more likely it is to end up in the middle. And he looked at me and says, Peter, we are a publicly traded company. I have to have a better explanation to my CEO that we just hit a bad string of heads, you know. Do you guys flip coins in Brazil? Do you flip coins? Heads, tails? Okay, in the United States, sometimes.
Not really.
Not really. All right, well, sometimes
we'll
flip a coin. But he rejected that idea. And then he said, Peter, I'm just going to go in there and tell them that we'll split it in the middle. That we'll pay $3 million and be done. And I said, boy, I would not do that. These people have been very, very, very slow to let go of their money. And for you to think they're going to go from 325 and just meet you in the middle right now. He goes, no. So anyways, long and short is he went in, he gave his $3 million offer. He walked out, they talked about it, and then they rejected it. I brought them all back together. So I want you guys to know we don't have a deal today. And it's 4 o'clock, so you've got to run for the airport. I want you to know we don't have a deal, but I have one more thing. And they go, what now? I said, plaintiffs, will you leave your 325 on the table until close of business Friday? This was on a Wednesday afternoon, 48-hour window, cooling off period. And they said, they mumbled with each other and talked with their lawyer. Said, okay, our offer's on the table until close of business on Friday. I said, okay. That's the best I got, guys. You know, go to the airport. Good luck, everybody. God bless you. And everyone took off. Except for I walked back in the room with the lawyers for this guy, right? And they say, Robinson, you threw us under the bus. I said, what? They go, right now, their offer's on the table till 5 o'clock Friday afternoon. All the pressure's on us as to whether we're going to pay that by Friday or not. You should have said, have all our 3 and their 325 on the offer till Friday afternoon. I said, oh my gosh, you're exactly right. I did unintentionally put all the pressure on you. Let me go in there and tell them that your offer is on the table until Friday also. He goes, no, forget it. I go, no, don't forget. He goes, Peter, the moment's lost. I go, I can do this. He goes, no, you can't. Don't do it. But they never hired me again. They were mad at me for. So I think it's good mediator technique when people do reach impasse to say, well, everyone leave your offers on the table for 2 days so that the lawyers can continue to negotiate and they can get home and sleep and digest some of the things about risks and fears and costs and what have you. And then maybe come out the other side. That makes sense? So notice when I say brackets, what we're really talking about now is mediator proposed hypothetical brackets. And to put all three of these things of the mediator's proposal, the hypothetical offer, and the brackets, all merge them all into one. And now you have another tool to try and help people cross the final gap to get things done. So those are my mechanical techniques to try and help mediators walk through the final stages of trying to help people get to a deal. I have another story to tell you, but I'll stop for a minute here and we'll talk for a while. And I don't need to tell, it's just another story. We all got stories.
We are here now. We are here to learn from your experience. You're just great.
Oh, thank you.
But I really want to ask you, how do we build this kind of trust?
Yeah. This
kind of trust that makes the mediation parties listen to our mediator's proposal. How do we do that?
Well, and that's in the first four. Don't forget, I talked about 5 stages, right? In our model, the first stage is convening, getting the people to come. But after that, when we get together, it's opening. And when you're opening the mediation, your goal is to make everyone feel safe. That they know that you will protect and make sure that they're not abused in this process. The next stage is to facilitate communication. Here, the goal is to help people tell their stories, but also understanding. And this is the stage in communication where the mediator is going to be very empathetic. Someone says, oh my gosh, these other people are terrible. The mediator in the back of his mind might have all kinds of questions to ask to see whether they're terrible or not. But he's not going to ask those questions. He's just going to say, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And he's going to be their friend. In America, we have people who claim to be horse whisperers. You guys, have you heard of horse whispering? Some people communicate with horses in such a way that inspires trust. And instead of having to be mean to the horse to get the horse to be trained, the horse wants to follow the trainer because he knows that the trainer is kind and caring and considerate of the horse. And part of this is, they call it linking up, where the trainer somehow gets the horse to understand that I'm not going to be your enemy. I'm not going to abuse you. I'm going to be kind to you. And this is the stage here that we as mediators accept people, accept their truth, even though it's, in back in our head, it's kind of like, you know what, this person has a very skewed perspective. Guess what? After the communication section, then we have the negotiation section, and then we have the closing section. One of the things in closing is to be the agent of reality. If somebody has told you something that you are skeptical about, you can now ask questions, but not until you've got them to trust you and to believe that you are their ally. And frankly, this is a place to where, Valerie, you as a non-judicial mediator are going to have a giant advantage. Judges automatically have prestige and trust because of their position, right? but it's institutional trust. It's not interpersonal. In fact, frankly, the judge might be kind of standoffish. I set my timer for an hour to make sure that I didn't go. I didn't. Okay. So the fact is, the judge might be emotionally distant because typically judges look at the facts and the law, and they don't emotionally connect up with the people who are in their court. As a private, and it takes time. As a private mediator, you can build the relationship. The judge doesn't have time, but he has position. The private sector mediator has all kinds of time, but he has to earn that trust. One of the most prominent mediators in the United States is a guy named Bruce Edwards. Have you met Bruce yet? He's a wonderful guy. And he's done some teaching down in Brazil. And he says, sometimes I spend on a one-day mediation, my goal between 9 o'clock and noon is just to get people to like me, to just sit down and show them that I have ethics, I have integrity, I have values, that I have wisdom, that I'm really concerned for their best interest. And if we do this foundation later on, there's a corny phrase in the United States. I don't know if you guys heard this or not, but people don't care what you know until they know that you care. Have you heard that before?
That's a good one. No,
so
that's
you
a good
may
one.
know something, but they don't care what you know until they know that you have their best interest at heart. And when they know that you care for their well-being and that whatever wisdom you're sharing with them and encouragement you're giving them, well, again, likability is just a big factor here.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Peter, we have several friends here. I want you to know that Dorothea is with us. We have our friend Marcelo who is also here.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you, Marcelo. You are part of this.
Yeah, man.
And let me ask you a question. I am an enthusiast of brackets. I use it a lot. I want to know, when is the best moment to start using the brackets?
Yeah. It's interesting because usually I let people negotiate, and if they get stuck, then I start to make some of these interventions possible. But for example, I've done this to where early in the mediation, both sides have insulting opening offers, right? Someone demands $1 million, and the other side offers, $5,000. Okay, and I would go into the caucus room and say, "Why are you demanding $1 million?" And they say, "Because the other guy is only offered $5,000. He's not taking this case seriously, and I had to demand $1 million to try to get his attention. In fact, the other side's in bad faith." And I can ask him, I say, "Tell me, so here we have 5,000 and 1 million, right?" And now I'm talking to the plaintiff, and I say, "Let me ask, where should they have come in if they were going to show you that they were in good faith?" And he'll say, "Well, you know what? They should have come in at 100,000. Okay. And if they had come in at 100,000, I know your 1 million is in a reaction to the 5,000. What would have been your good faith offer, right?" And he'll probably say, "Well, if he came in at 100,000, I would have probably come in at 700,000. So notice there's the plaintiff's bracket. They think that is where this negotiation should have started, and that now we're both way out here because we're mad at each other because of the other's opening offer. Okay, you go to the defense and say, "Wow, you're only offering 5,000," and they say, "We had to because the plaintiff's demanding $1 million. We want to let him know that there's no way we're going to get anywhere close to $1 million, right? And we're doing that by telling him 5,000. In fact, the plaintiff was in bad faith." Oh, okay. Let me ask, if the plaintiff was in good faith, where do you think the plaintiff should have started, right? And if God smiles at you, he's going to say 700,000, but he's on the defense side. So he's probably going to not give the same number on the plaintiff side. He's probably going to say, well, the highest he should have come in is 600,000. Okay. So, and let me ask, had he come up to 600,000, if he had started at 600,000, would you have still come in with 500,000, 5,000? Or would you have been more reasonable? No, we would have been more reasonable. Okay, well, what? Right? And again, if God smiles on you, he'll say 100,000, but he'll probably say 50,000. Okay, so now we have the defense bracket, right? And now you notice they don't exactly line up, but the mediator can now come up with the mediator's proposed opening bracket. You know what? Can I get both of you to agree that plaintiff is going to start at 650 and the defense is going to start at 75? And we're not going to waste a lot of time messing around with all these silly numbers. Let's get closer in and start doing some serious conversation. And if plaintiff will go, and it's back to the hypothetical if, you go back to the plaintiff's room, you know, will you be at 650 if I can get him to start at 75? I know it's not exactly what you wanted, but it's in the ballpark, right? And you go to the defense room, will you go to 75 if I can get him to come in at 650? Not exactly what you wanted, but it's in the ballpark. So you might do this to do an intervention early in the mediation, but then I would leave it alone for a while, and hopefully they'll just start to negotiate from there, doing the other techniques we have. But usually I've seen it used at the end, towards the end, yeah. In fact, when people say, okay, now we're at impasse, all right, well, maybe we are, maybe we aren't. Now let's start to go to work. And you use it? Do the lawyers like it in Curitiba?
I use it a lot, and I have an interesting case. So I was mediating this case, and the plaintiff went to 15, and the defendant went to 10. So I went in caucus with them, and the plaintiff went to 12, but the defendant went to 13. So I brought them to a joint session, and I told them, I have good news and a bad news. It's the same news. Yeah. We could settle. And this leads to my following question. How about manipulation? You told us a little bit about manipulation, ethics. How do you deal with impartiality, neutrality, and manipulation in this kind of technique?
Yeah. You know, I think that mediators are inherently manipulative. What I just described to Valerie is to build a relationship, build rapport, get them to trust you, go out of your way to try and be likable. I have one friend who teaches for us. He says that, you know, he's in a cold weather state. When people arrive at his office, he goes out and takes their overcoats and he hangs them in the coat closet, and he brings them coffee. He has an assistant that he could sit back and let them do that, but he wants to serve them, and he wants the people to like him and to see him as a nice guy. And all of this is designed to be manipulative so that, as Valerie said, when we get down, you know, 6 hours later and we're making proposals, that they're willing to be receptive to us because we're not the enemy, we're their friend. So this whole model of saying, let's be empathetic in the communication stage and down here be the agent of reality, that's manipulation. I hope that we, and frankly, our neutrality, our impartiality says that we should make sure that we are being empathetic with both sides, right? And that we are being affirming and being encouraging to both sides, so that both sides feel like we are their friend. So there's neutrality and impartiality. But the truth is, if you have one part, now assuming that you have the expertise to say, for a case like this, I think the settlement should be 15,000 because you've done 10,000 of these, Fernando's one of those kinds of cases that you get a lot of, right? And don't you know that the defense has offered 10 and the plaintiff's had 100, right? And you do all the things that you do, but at the end of the day, those are the numbers, right? I think that for you to say, I don't lose my neutrality because I have to be more confrontive with one side. One side is being more unreasonable than the other side, in my opinion, if you have the subject matter expertise to know this case should end up between 15 and 20. And there you are, you have someone over here who's just very either inexperienced or, maybe a person who's not represented in your situation in the labor court. And he or she doesn't know, what do you get in this kind of situation? And for you to, when it comes to the agent of reality, now here's something that Valerie can do that, again, a judge would have a hard time doing. A lot of times, if you're going to be empathetic up here, down here, if you're going to have to confront someone being unrealistic, I can't say, yes, I understand, poor you, I feel, I can't be all encouraging and supportive up here, and then down here say, you know what, I think that you are pathetic and that you're whining too much and that you don't, I can't confront that person directly, but I can confront them indirectly by saying, let me tell you what I'm afraid of for you, because I'm your friend and I think I see something, a potential for something really bad to happen. And that I think that if you went to court, that either a judge or a jury, would see this and think that you are greedy, and that they would form a negative opinion of you, and that they would not see you as a sympathetic witness that they want to give as much as they can to. They would see you as a person that they really don't like because you're too ambitious. And my sense is, I would be afraid to be your lawyer and to take those numbers, into the hearing because I think that this is just going to make them mad. You need to move closer down to where you're seen as a reasonable person, a judge or a jury or an arbitrator, whoever's going to end up making this decision. You have to think about how they're going to perceive you. And notice that I never said, I think you're greedy. I never said, I think that you're, it's not me. It's all, I deflect it over to the judge, the jury, now, in Brazil, do the judges mediate their own cases that are assigned to them for trial, or do they mediate the other judges' cases?
Their own cases.
Them.
Okay.
We have, Valéria, the Sejuscs, centros para solução de conflitos, em que um juiz media casos de outros, e nós temos os juízes mediando também os seus casos. Professor, we have both types. We have the judge dealing with his own case, but we have like Court Connect programs where the judges used to mediate.
They trade cases, yeah.
Yes, they trade cases.
So especially if the judge, see, this gets very tricky if you're the judge and you're the mediator, because you can't be so empathetic up here that the people feel like you're going to rule in their favor. You have to keep a certain professional distance because you're going to be the decision maker later. And down here, you can't say, I want you to know, if I were ruling on this case, I think your 100 would be, ridiculous. I can't say that because I am going to rule on this case. And in the United States, sometimes judges get accused of prejudging the case. You didn't even hear the case. And he started telling us, what he thinks about justice. So it gets very complicated for the judge mediator. I did a survey of about 400 judges in California. And Fernando, I ended up writing 4 law review articles in 400 judges in California completed a big survey about how they mediate and when they mediate their own cases. And I got all this data about sitting judges as mediators. So, and then I put the data into 4 law review articles. If I never talk about these things, but if you're doing the research on this, you may want to look at that for what you're encouraging your judges there. Okay.
That would be great. That would be great information for us. We do have a question here, Peter. Why do lawyers, in your examples, threaten to leave the mediation table if they are aware of the costs and risks?
Right. At least in my country, the lawyers they want to get the best deal they can for their client. And if they threaten to walk away, they're hoping the other side blinks, that the other side caves. So they threaten to walk away. And sometimes they'll tell the mediator, well, we're going to walk away. But they know that they still have more to contribute towards a resolution. Do lawyers in Brazil behave the same way?
Not really. we don't have many lawyers who trust mediation yet.
Yeah.
That's why Fernando and I are having this initiative to bring you guys with more experience and more things to teach us, so we may change their way of thinking about mediation.
You may want to delete all the parts of my talk where I talked about lawyers talking about leaving, because I don't want to teach the lawyers to behave that way, but it's an ultimatum, my way or I'm going home. And sometimes the other side says, okay. But sometimes the mediator has to stand in the middle and still get both sides to do some more compromising.
Yeah, but we need lawyers here to come to the table.
Well, when judges make them go to the judicial mediation, then they will see how this can be a resource and can help them. Because going to trial, the lawyer is the one who might be embarrassed with his client when he says, I think that we're going to win, and then he loses. In the United States, I think the reason 95% of the cases settle right before trial is because the lawyer has already earned a lot of money doing all the work that lawyers do, but now his client's expecting to win, and the lawyer knows that there are risks. And what happens in the United States is that the lawyer says, let's go to mediation, because the lawyer wants the mediator to be the bad cop and say, you got problems with your case and you don't want to, and to be the one to convince the client. And now suddenly, the lawyer doesn't have to say, we have a great case, have a great case, have a great case. You know what? Our case isn't that good, let's settle. That would be too hard for the client. The mediator will be the one who will help have that conversation. So therefore, the lawyer and the mediator become allies against the client. Both of them are teaming up to get the client to settle the case, because the client, I want to go to, and both of them know this is risky.
Yeah, that's another kind of trust to be built.
Yeah.
Between lawyers and mediators. We need to make lawyers trust the process of mediation.
Valerie,
And then I'm sure it's going to work.
Valerie, how many years have you been practicing law?
20, almost
Okay.
25.
22.
Okay, let me tell you what I love. It breaks my heart, and it happens in many. I've spoken at a conference in Greece. The room had about 300 people. 90% of them spent 3 months of salary to get certified as a mediator, and they had not done one case for pay in the last year. And they were mad, right? And the problem was almost 90% of them had been practicing law for 1 year. When you say that the lawyers have to trust the mediator, the lawyers can trust you because you've practiced law for 20 years, right? Fernando about labor cases because he's seen 1 million of them on the court. It's a village elder kind of thing. And when we find lawyers and judges who are respected, people say, mediation, I don't know what mediation is, but you know what? I trust Valeria Pinto. And now suddenly they're going because they trust Dorotea. They trust Fernando. They trust people like Marcelo and Valeria. So therefore, to me, it breaks my heart when I see young lawyers, getting excited about this and yes. And I know that they don't have any credibility among other lawyers yet. People like Jair, and that's why I love it at Pepperdine when we have people like Fernando and Jair and Dorotea come and say, I want to learn a lot about mediation, because they are already in a position to be influencers and trusted by the practicing bar.
That's what we hope.
That's what okay, let me tell you a story about the United States. Two very respected Judge Trotter and a very respected lawyer, Jack Welch. They were the founders of JAMS along with Warren Knight. JAMS is a giant, the most prestigious group in the United States of judges and lawyer mediators. Okay, they were the founder. In 1990, or maybe it was 88, they went to an ABA conference to talk about mediation. And they had their room and they had everything all set up, and only 5 people showed up. And then they told me the story that next door was a workshop on how to give an opening statement at trial. And they had 200 people in the room, and people were out in the hallway trying to hear what the guy was saying. And they thought, you know what? 10% of these lawyers are going to ever give an opening statement in front of a jury. Almost all the cases settle. And yet here, so I want you to know, in 1988 or 1990, in the United States, mediation was not well known or respected. But then people like you, people like Fernando, people like Dorothea, the people who did have the respect of people in the practicing lawyers, they started to be available as mediators. And like I said, they may not know anything about mediation, but they say, you know what? I know Fernando. I will go because of who he is, not because of anything else. And then they'll learn about mediation by going.
Yes, we need to bring science. We have to work with the young generations, and that's why we are bringing professors and scholars like you, like Tom, and others. I think we don't have time for another questions, Valerie.
Maybe to end with Dorothea's question. Peter, would you say that getting lawyers to know and study mediation would help?
See, I like to focus on lawyers, not law students, because the law students are going to be baby lawyers and they're going to do whatever their firm tells them to do. But if you can have meetings of the San Paulo Bar Association with experienced lawyers and having experienced lawyers give the workshop where they trust what is said, absolutely. But the mandatory mediation in many jurisdictions in the United States, they had mandatory mediation for a while, and judges and lawyers had to go. At least in the United States, lawyers tend to be very conservative. They don't like change. They know what they do it well. And then you say, we want you to go to mediation, and they feel like, I have no idea what you want to do. I don't know how to be competent in mediation. And they're afraid. So court annex programs, I think, do have a place in the evolution of this movement.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. Peter, thank you so much. We don't want to keep you here with us. Our time is up. It's 3:23 here.
It's my pleasure. And I thank you both for what you're doing. And anything I can do to be supportive and helpful to the movement in Brazil, please don't hesitate to call.
Thank you so much. We're really thankful for your time here with us.
Okay, guys. God bless. Good luck.
Peter, as our audience could see, you are committed with your students, me, Valeria. It's your passion, the mediation. You have inspired generations of students and helped them to develop careers in mediation, negotiation. Yeah. Let me tell you that when I researched Pepperdine in order to apply to my LLM, I was told that I must know Peter. There is a saying in Brazil, you can't go to Rome and don't see the Pope. And I would say you can't go to Pepperdine and don't meet Peter. I want you to know that I am very happy today. It was an honor to have you talking to us. These are uncertain times, but I hope we can have you here in Brazil pretty soon. Thank you so much. Be safe and be sound, my friend.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. God bless.
Thank you, Peter. Bye-bye.
God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Fernando, mais uma vez,
Sim.
muito obrigada pela parceria.
Eu que agradeço, Valéria. Você gostaria já de anunciar nosso próximo convidado?
Gostaríamos já de convidar todos que estiveram conosco agora para se juntarem a nós no dia 27 de julho, às 18 horas, com o nosso querido professor Singh, que trará toda a sua experiência em mediação entre países, mediação internacional, mediação entre comunidades, para nos abrilhantar aqui em mais uma conversa sobre as experiências em mediação.
O professor Singh, Valéria, aceitou nosso convite e eu aqui gostaria de agradecer a Valéria pela ideia que ela teve. Era um sonho que ela tinha de trazer o professor Singh. O professor Singh agora, atualmente, ele é o diretor executivo do programa de mestrado do Straus Institute. É uma pessoa muito culta e muito qualificada, não só em mediação, mas também em arbitragem, né? Ele é especialista principalmente em mediação cross-cultural, né? Entre culturas, e aqui vocês irão observar que ele navega, ele transita entre conflitos entre países, entre empresas transnacionais. Enfim, vai ser uma oportunidade muito interessante para todos aqueles que querem saber um pouco mais de como a mediação vem se desenvolvendo rapidamente, não só para questões, né, entre pessoas, entre empresas, mas também entre grupos bem maiores. Já fica, então, o nosso convite para todos vocês. Valéria?
Obrigada, meu amigo. Uma excelente semana a todos e até a próxima.
Até uma próxima.